You want to kill me, don't you, Tucker? Well, take a number and get in line. I'm Liam, he's Rob, and welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. This week, we take a look back at Sylvester Stallone's 1993 climby action thriller, Cliffhanger, a movie that ticks every box one would expect from a 90s action thriller while still delivering a smidge of the 80s action nonsense that Stallone has become famous for. A wonderful throwback that remains infinitely watchable today thanks to a truly bonkers collection of villains and some truly top-tier action set pieces. Sure, the plot requires apparently intelligent people to act horror movie dumb, but when the results of this fun, honestly, it's hard to care. Now, Rob, bizarrely, I think I've only seen this movie once, and beyond the very famous opening sequence, I couldn't remember shit about this film. And I mean that in the best possible way. It was almost like watching it for the first time again. And obviously, I'd forgotten how good this movie is because Cliffhanger's pretty fucking dope.
Yeah, it's not too bad, is it? I've only seen it once or twice before. So my first question: is that a genre of film I've never heard of? A climby, what did you call it? A
climby action thriller. Well, I think of this as like, because it is the early 90s. Yes, it's an action movie, and it's actually pretty relentless. This film does not fuck around. The pacing, above all else, is awesome, which kind of gets you over the rougher patches in the middle of the movie. But the way it's shot, the score, everything about it is, to me at least, feels like a 90s action thriller. But like I said, the inclusion of Stallone and the fact that he's one of the listed screenwriters on this film ensures that there's enough dumb 80s about it. But it definitely belongs in the early 90s, this movie.
Yeah, and like you said, you've watched it once before. You've watched it again. You forgot apart from the opening scene. We all remember the opening scene.
Cannot forget the opening.
No, the rest of it is pretty much it comes fresh. I mean, I didn't know where I got it from until I watched this. But "Go fetch Wonder Dog" is I've been using that line for fucking years.
And you just found out it's in this movie.
Yeah, now I know where I got it from. The other thing, I watched this on Amazon Prime. I'm sure you did too.
Yeah, the remastered
version.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it hindered it a little bit. Due to clearly set and I'm jumping straight to the end here, but when Travers gets killed in that weird lake,
I literally said that to Beth, and I was just like, "Oh, Travers," because I couldn't remember, but I was like, "Travers is going to get killed here." And she said, "Why'd you say that?" I was like, "Because they've built a set for this sequence. It's going to be a set piece." And it's a weird mix because the cinematography for this film is largely fantastic. Some of the wide shots, it literally reminded me quite a bit of Lord of the Rings. When they go practical for this movie, it looks gorgeous, and they do a really good job because Stallone was famously quite afraid of heights, so couldn't do too much of the climbing. But they do a good job of kind of combining, obviously, footage of a stunt double with him to the point where there were a couple of shots where it's just like, man, that does, it's not quite fucking Tom Cruise on the side of a mountain in Mission Impossible. You can't top, that's what makes that special. The fact that you can put the camera in the star's face because the psycho is fucking doing it. It's not that, but they do a good job of shooting around him. The only problem is exactly what you said there, because those scenes are so effective. When they move to on-set, lot scenes, it is quite jarring. Even that opening sequence, you get the wide shot of Stallone climbing the mountain, looks dope. You get the wide establishing shots of the location, looks amazing. When you have Hal and Stallone, I don't know why I'm using a combination of character names and real names, once they're on top of the mountain talking together, you're suddenly like, this looks like a lot from like 1950s.
Yeah, and it was clear, like you said, the remastered hindered it just a little bit as well. When Gabe, I'll use his hero name, yes. When Gabe is waving to the helicopter, and it's clearly the stunt double, and it is clearly this. Like it's so egregious from the remastered that it's almost as bad as the face-off speedboat scene at the end.
Or Arnold Schwarzenegger in True Lies on the horse. That's another one, which is, I mean, that film, again, two movies which look gorgeous in HD, but those rough edges, which you could smooth over, like, you can kind of see his face. It's fine. You can see his face like a motherfucker now. Even in this one, I could tell by the dude's calves. It was like when he was climbing, they had different calves because, like, obviously he's like doing that bit where he's climbing upside down. And, you're not seeing his face. You just see his body. And I was like, fuck, are those Stallone's calves? And then they cut again to a bit when you can clearly see it was Stallone. I was like, it must be the other guy. It's the only time I've ever been able to tell a stunt double by the size of his calves.
By his legs. But, I mean, usually for you, it's their mouths, isn't it? But
I'm a stickler for good mouth. Well, superhero films very important. Anyway.
But so talking about the opening scene, because there's a number of things I wanted to address with it. The first one being, why is Hal acting like a dick when he took his missus to the top of that? Like a woman that can't climb. Even like Jesse said, you did the right thing. You're the only one that didn't panic. Hal took not even inexperienced climb. He took a novice to like one of the worst climbs. Yeah, the tower.
And you see again in that establishing shot, it's a tiny little peak. I'm like, I don't even know how a human being gets up there. You'd be like, to get anywhere near that, you'd be like, you'd have to be the elite of the elite. He's taking his fucking part-time girlfriend up there. They get stuck on a mountain because he gets fucking injured and he gives Gabe shit. Get to
Was she attached to his back or something as he climbed up there? Because if she managed to climb all the way up there, I'm pretty sure it's just an abseil down or something, isn't it? There's no way she free climbed. I would have to have thought they'd set anchors or something.
How the fuck did she even get up there? Like I literally couldn't even figure out. Like you said, they implied that she's something of a novice. And you see where they are. This isn't like some, like, you know, there's one thing about getting up like a high mountain, at the top mountain. This is some weird jutting peak where I'm like you said, I don't know, lest he carried her, how the fuck they got up there. It makes no sense. But more importantly, to your point, Hal is clearly the villain of the first half of this movie. He is such a dick. And it's just like, everyone must have been like, surely I get it in the moment. Your girlfriend's dead. You know, he said to do something else. Gabe obviously went in a different direction. He's the one who ultimately dropped her. Although my wife, Bethan, she said, oh, no, that woman always just looked like a dropper. So I was like, wait, so are you suggesting that she dropped herself? She's like, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. So she's just got that look about it. I mean, you put her hand up, Stallone would have got her. They would have saved the day. Everything would have been fine. But once you have like a bit of time to think about it, Hal, you can't keep up the rage. Dude, it's your fault that she's dead. 100%. Yeah.
You take a teddy bear up with you as well. You're asking for trouble. I don't know why, 100%. But taking a teddy bear up with you climbing when you put other things in that bag, you're clearly asking for trouble. The other thing I wrote down about the opening scene, after Gabe, for all intents and purposes, drops her.
I'm going on the basis she dropped herself. I'm with my wife on this one.
Yeah, okay.
I think Gabe did everything he could.
Yeah, Bethan, you got 100%. I'll go with that she dropped herself as well. So after she drops herself, that's an uncomfortable helicopter ride home, isn't it?
Oh,
does Gabe go, oh, you're all right, I'll climb down like you should have done?
It's like he just kind of wheels back over. He's like, he just looks and goes, oh, this is awkward.
Yeah.
So she's probably dead. And in fairness to the movie, they make sure that she's dead. Like, this movie is made today. This is going to be bullshit PG-13 or something like that. This film does not fuck about. And that, I actually, we can pick apart Hal and stuff like that. And some of the shots, blah, blah, blah. But I think this is legitimately one of the all-time cold openings to a movie. Because you don't know what's going on. You just know it's a climby action thriller. That's all you know. And for the star of the movie, and we've established now that she drops herself, but, for all intents and purposes, people watching it the first time, the star of the movie, the big action star, Sylvester Stallone, drops that woman. And, it's made so dramatic by the cuddly toy falling first. Fuck, they might actually do this. And when she falls, the way they shoot it, the first wide shot in slow motion is amazing. Then Fantastic. They cut to her in the Hans Gruber style of her looking up at Sylvester Stallone. And then just to make sure that you know how fucked up this is, they cut back to her screaming halfway down the mountain. I was like, fuck. Okay, dude, we get it. She doesn't make it. I mean, the only thing they could have done is show you the impact on the jagged rocks at the bottom. But I was like, they don't mess around. And it is a harrowing sequence. And it sets you up wonderfully for the rest of the film. The idea that this is dangerous as fuck to be up here.
Yeah, and it's such a fantastic cold opening. I couldn't explain it any better than what you just did. But it kind of got ruined then by the banter. Like, that banter felt so forced. All of it. When you had it on the radio, things, I don't know. It just, for some reason, I don't know if it's the writing or the delivery.
It's Stallone. It's Stallone. And like I said at the top of the podcast, it's that movie where, for the most part, it feels like that kind of classic. And part of it's the score by Trevor Jones, which as soon as it started, I was like, wait a minute, this sounds exactly the same as Last of the Mohicans. It's because his last movie was Last of the Mohicans. He clearly just had the music left over and just passed on to this, changed one or two chords and said, jobs are good. And we've actually been doing a lot of his films. He did Time Bandits as well, Labyrinth, Arachnophobia, besides the point. But it's got that epicness. It feels like a serious action movie, but it is with those, like you say, those moments of dodgy dialogue, whether it be the Force one-liners from Stallone, right from an 80s movie, down to the stuff with what's his girlfriend's name? Jill? What's that?
Jessie.
Jessie, thank you.
Jessie, yeah.
You know, she does the whole Adrian speech. You're going to be stuck up on that mountain forever, Gabe, and all that. It's just like, oh, dude, this is so fucking 80s. So I totally agree with you. As great as some of this is, and as kind of 90s action movie as it, for the most part, I'd say 90% of the movie is, Stallone with his screenplay is still got one foot in the 80s, and it jars against the rest of the movie, and it just doesn't quite add up.
You've seen this film once before, obviously. I've seen it once or twice, and you don't remember much aside from the opening. And yes, I do remember the opening, but I didn't remember a lot of the characters. And the reason why I'm saying that is, as soon as I saw Michael Rooker as Hal Tucker, I'm like, oh, well, he's a bad guy. Like, I couldn't see him. Yeah, I couldn't see him without thinking, well, he's going to be a bad guy. And throughout the entire film, he didn't. He kind of upset me because he didn't turn.
Yeah, you think he's going to have something up his sleeve. Don't get me wrong. He's still a dick, as we said.
Oh, he's an absolute prick.
But if anything, he actually becomes nicer as the movie goes on. You know, he kind of buddies up with Gabe.
Yeah.
Does a few of the hero things. So by the end of the film, he feels less and less rookery as the movie goes. Like, I can accept him at the start. As you say, I know he's not a bad guy, but he's a dick. So it's like, oh, it's fine. Rooker's a dick. His characters are always dicks. But by the end, I'm just like, oh, wait, is he just like a nice guy now? This fucking sucks. I can't deal with it. But luckily we had Lynn. I'm not sure if we needed more evil in this film, though, in fairness, because this movie has one of the strangest collection of villains I've ever seen on screen.
I know.
The idea that you could put those, let's say, 5-6 people together, and it's going to end in anything other than disaster. Every single one of them is like 10 on the arsehole scale. And it's like, you're not going to get by with this. They're all psychos. They're all killers. You need like the Die Hard group, where you've got like one psycho, one level-headed, one's a computer guy, one's just happy to be there. You know, it kind of brings levels to the villainy kind of like Hall of Fame, whatever you want to call it. Whereas this, they're all just too mental, and by default then, they're all just too dumb.
And that's it. You've got the one trope of the evil guy. Like you said, when you've got the Die Hard thing, you have all your different tropes of a bad guy. But you've got the trope of the mental guy. And then when the mental guy dies, that trope seems to be passed on to the next guy to become the mental guy. Then that moves on to the next guy to become the mental guy. Like, until you're left with Craig Fairbrass of all fucking people, right at the end,
totally.
You know, to get shot. You're into the bad guys, and we're going to spend a lot of time on Lithgow and fucking Travers Rexlin. But you mentioned Jessie, right? I think the movie was afraid that you would confuse. There's after Sarah drops herself, there's basically two women in this film. There's Jessie, and then there's Caroline Goodall, who was Moira from Hook.
I couldn't believe that. When I saw it, I was like, that can't be Moira from Hook, because she's like evil in it. For a second, do you know who I thought it was when I first saw her? I thought it was the evil model lady from Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it might have been her, because they got like a similar-ish vibe, that kind of like kind of stony gaze, slightly psycho. But when I was like, no, it's fucking Moira from Hook. Oh, she was so lovely in that. She's not in this film, but
as the film went on, did you confuse them, Jessie and Crystal?
No, did you?
No, I didn't. But IMDb were afraid you were going to confuse them, because credited Janine Turner as Jessie Deegan, Caroline Goodall as Crystal / jet pilot.
Just in case.
Just in case.
That's why they cut her hair so short. Just in case you're like, oh, they look almost exactly the same. Dude, they don't at all. I'm pretty sure they look exactly the same. But that is one of the biggest issues with the film, is the fact that I do not buy Jessie and Sylvester, Jessie and Gabe. I don't buy them as a couple at all. They have no chemistry. You know, all she does is moan to him. She's kind of sidelined for most of the film, which kind of makes it okay, because the emphasis then becomes on John Lithgow and his, troop of absolute fucking psychopaths. But if there is like a weak link in the film, for the most part, I think it's that whole like bullshit relationship. Will they, won't they thing? Or will they again, won't they again, between Gabe and Jessie? Jess,
you never feel the relationship or anything like that between them. It's really odd. And I'm with you.
It doesn't go anywhere.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, you didn't need, and bless her, like I said, she's one of only two women actually in this film, pretty much for the most of it.
Well, there's three, I guess, but one of them dies.
Yeah, but after Sarah drops herself, yeah. But they kind of shoehorn her in then. They get her to be landed into where the winds aren't too bad, which looks like they just dropped him into the valley of the mountain.
Yeah.
But they're quite high up apparently because there's snow to the left of you, but then you're fine with no wind. Like the geography of it is very odd. But
yeah, it's pretty mental.
I'll go by the buy, but I don't buy them at all. And at some point, I wasn't buying Gabe as like this hero guy right up until, and he's already climbed the mountain. You already see his arms, you've seen his calves, obviously. But when they strip him off and they tie the rope around his leg, and it's like, go fetch Wonder Dog, and they just send him, and he does that first initial jump onto the crevice and pulls himself up. You think, fucking hell, he's looking good here, isn't he?
Oh, that's the thing. Like in that sequence, I don't think there's any real sense to them saying take his jacket off. They've kind of forced it to the point where they're just like, well, it's Stallone. He's still in great shape. Take his. We can't have him in winter gear this entire movie. We've got to at least show you the goods, show you that he's still shredded, and he is still shredded. And I like you said, that's one of the things that jars with the film: the fact that for the most part, beyond the fact that he's a very, very good climber, he is something of an everyday guy for at least part of the film. He's not like, classic hero material. He's not doing hero shit. He's just doing what he can. But then, of course, he has those 80s action moments. And this goes right down to when he kills Cool Runnings. Like, that feels like it's from a different movie.
Sure.
When he
you mean Canette?
Yeah. When he picks him up by the crotch, above his head, and then body presses him through a spike in the ceiling, I was like, where the fuck is this from? It's from no, it doesn't match up with the movie at all. Tonally, aesthetically, everything about it, and for the character of Gabe as well, it feels completely and utterly out of place. When he did it, I was just like, how the fuck did I forget this happened? It feels like something out of Judge Dredd.
They were previously on a mountain. Then they found a crack in the wall, which turned out to be the biggest fucking cave system ever.
Yeah, I'll give them that.
Like I said, the geography was weird.
It is weird. It is weird. And even just like you said, like it's not just Jess showing up, it's Frank. And I was literally thinking to myself, why is Frank here? And then of course by the end, he's doing his paintings where Banana is eating a monkey. It's all very charming. And you're like, oh, that's the guy from the Waltons.
Yes, John Walton Sr., yeah.
Yeah, the only reason he's there is to look lovely so that, like, in case you didn't get the message, in case these evil bastards doing relentlessly evil shit weren't quite evil enough, we'll get them to needlessly shoot down Walton Sr., who's just adorable. And that's his only job in this film. He might as well have been played by a fucking puppy. It's like he has no purpose other than to show up and go, we're going to make you guys look even more horrible. And in fairness, it worked. My wife, Bethan, was fucking devastated when Frank died. She looks at me, she goes, they're not going to shoot Frank. And I just looked at her, I was like, honestly, I can't remember. Oh, yeah, they've shot Frank.
There's Frank. And
why did they shoot him? And I was like, I know, they're bad guys. That's it.
And that's the reason as well for Max Perlich as Evan and Trey Brownell as Brett, because they realized we're on top of a mountain. You've got some terrible bad guys. They're all the same bad guy, but there's about 7 of them. But they've got nobody to go up against or kill. Usually at this point, they'd have a bunch of hostages they're dragging through, but they haven't. So what do we do? Oh, we'll just get some, I don't know, some stoners, some surfer dudes who don't surf, they jump off mountains. We'll get them guys. Okay, that's fine, and they'll die. Oh yeah, but we need we need some heart. Oh well, let's kill Walton Senior. That'll do. Yeah, okay, there's your heart. We're done. We're good. We can move on.
It's a good point actually, because when they killed like the two, like the 90s, extreme dudes, whatever you want to call them, they make a bigger deal of it than it really should be. Like, at the start of the film, it's like Stallone shows up and he's got that classic look, like that timeless look where he's driving a 4x4. He's got like the big jacket with the collar. He's got like the denim jeans. He just looks cool. Like he looks like he could almost walk out of any era. And then suddenly you get these two morons drive up alongside him and like, oh yeah, it's the early 90s and they're quote unquote extreme. Now they come into the film and then they disappear until, like you said, halfway through, all of a sudden they show up and the bad guys, again, inexplicably, you could have just said, oh, these are a tour guide, let them go. They make another one of their array of terrible decisions and decide that they're going to kill them. And they do it in slow motion with all this dramatic music. And I'm like, wait, am I supposed to care that these guys are dead? They're annoying. And also, I don't give a fuck. I don't know who they are other than the fact that they're extreme. But they have to make a big deal out of it because of your point that they don't really have anyone else to play off or anyone else to kill. And I think that's a great point, because I think that kind of explains why they're all psychos, because there has to be that kind of bite between the character. They can't all just get on and be evil together. They'll have to be uniquely and individually evil. So you buy at any moment that they might turn on each other.
You got to sow the seeds of mistrust between them, because
exactly, yeah,
they're the ones then who have to bounce off each other. And you had this so many times to the point where it started to get boring, where like Rex Lynn was the guy. You need me. I'm the guy in charge. Richard Travers, the charge agent that turned. Like, I'm the guy in charge. I'm the guy with the. Do you know the multitudes of codes you have to put into my weird little portable TV screen?
A few times.
Yeah, and to the point where it's overplayed, and they just can't wait to kill him and things like that. And then John Lithgow is chewing the scenery as Eric Quaylen. I don't think you need, like,
unbelievably,
when you get these mountain killer films, and to be fair, there's quite a few of them if you look into it. There's one with Tom Berenger and the Kurgan from Highlander, Clancy Brown.
Awesome.
And Sidney Poitier. Sorry, how did I not say Sidney Poitier? There's a few of these, like, and you don't need a ragtag group that should be taking a building hostage. You just need one or two bad guys. You had John Lithgow and maybe Jet Pilot Crystal. That's fine. You know, that's enough of drama. Why you needed then the cannon fodder? Basically, that's all it is. They're just have them die on a mountain.
Did you say her name was? I mean, fairness, right? Because at one point they're all like there's so many. They're all alpha males to the nth degree. That's the whole point. Yeah. And you look at John Lithgow, and you're like, well, why are they all listening to him? Is it just because he sounds evil? And in fairness, the way they establish that, he's the reason he's in charge is actually super cold. That scene with Crystal, where they kind of imply that they're in love, and again, it has that similar vibe to Die Hard with a Vengeance and their kind of weird relationship they have in that film.
Yeah.
But the way that he basically proves his point or gets his way is by shooting her just out of the blue. I was like, God damn, that was cold as fuck. No pun intended, because it was obviously very cold around there. But the way he just to prove a point to the guy and just make himself like less disposable, as it were, he just shoots her. You think everyone just looks and goes, fair play, this guy is not fucking round. And as much as, and I think everyone's chewing the scenery, even the British guy has that horrendous soccer analogy which he just runs into the ground when he's fighting Hal at the end of the film. He's like,
this is Craig Fairbrass.
Yeah, Craig Fairbrass, where he's like, I'm going to have my little I'm British moment. Immediately gives up the ghost by referring to it as soccer rather than football. Like, who the fuck are you talking to? But then just keeps going with the analogy. I'm like, dude, what are you going to do? Play 90 minutes of imaginary football as you kick the shit out of Hal? It's like, for fuck's sake, you do realize you're going to die in this scene, right? Jesus Christ. Like, you can't talk for that long, not finish a job, and not expect to somehow die yourself.
And he had to look around and see that the rest of the guys have already been taken out one by one.
Oh, so
who was the...
But it's fun.
Who was the guy? There was the other, the one with the long hair, Keldon. He was dragged down, wasn't he?
One of the dumbest, like, that establishes early doors, and we'll get to the amazing in-air sequence and the crash, which is quite interesting. But once they first land and they get hold of Gabe and Hal, and they're on that ledge again, kind of Lord of the Ringsy, a cross between Lord of the Rings and Predator, if anything.
Yeah.
So they send Gabe up the mountain and obviously ask him to take off his jacket because you've got to show off Sylvester Stallone. But while he's up there, they immediately and out loud say, we're going to kill him when he comes down. But they do it in earshot of Hal. And it's just like, dude, you don't need to say this now. Just deal with them when they come back down. So Hal then obviously screams up, mistake number one. And then what they do is they just start pulling on Gabe's leg. It's like, I don't know what you're going to achieve. You're going to kill Gabe and you're going to lose all the money. And then just to make sure that they are really that dumb, they just start shooting fucking grenades up there, which is going to kill Gabe. It's going to lose the money at best. But what is it really going to do? Cause a fucking avalanche, which is going to kill at least some of you. It is so, and again, like I said in the intro, the plot does rely on apparently smart people doing outrageously dumb things. And that sequence alone, you've got Lithgow, who, with the accent and everything, you just kind of have to assume he's the brains of the operation, makes so many fucking dumb errors. And you just go, all right, fair enough, we'll just go with this.
That's right, yeah, brains of the operation. Because the dumbest thing, and maybe somebody will turn around and tell me I'm wrong on this, but when he's in the helicopter at the end, and he does it twice, dude, and he points his handgun out of the window at people. Like, he did it to Jessie. He's flying the helicopter. He points his handgun at her. The next scene you see, she's in the helicopter. So she didn't run. He landed it, managed to get it inside, all because he pointed his handgun out of the window of the helicopter. Like, love, should duck and dive, dodge and weave. Like,
yeah, like she's done there, but then you get back to the helicopter, and of course he's in there quailing, and Sylvester Stallone, again, clearly trying to exploit him. Like, no, come a little closer, come a little closer. Like, dude, what? How fucking dumb are you? It's so ridiculous. Yeah, it's fun and it's forgivable because it is ultimately, for all its trappings, a dumb action movie. But Quaylen makes so many stupid errors. Like, dude, you deserve to die. And in fairness, the ending goes full. Like, it's a cross between, I don't know, Temple of Doom and The Matrix, the end of this film. I forgot. Like, it's a big set piece. The bit with the bridge is awesome. The way the helicopter drops down reminds me a lot of that Matrix sequence when it hits the window. And, right down to, I assume that, Lithgow betrayed Shiva at some point, because that sequence when they're actually trying to climb back up, it looks like it's lifted almost perfectly from the end of Temple of Doom. So again, it does have its 80s moments and it is ridiculous. And it's almost surprising that exists in the same movie as the what would you call it, airplane sequence, which is I can't believe I forgot about that sequence. It's
Force
amazing.
One sequence.
Oh, it's totally Air Force One. It's totally Air Force
One. Air Force One stole it from this, but yeah.
But yeah, like all that, when I was watching, I was like, Jesus Christ, this looks like legit. This looks real. And then it's like, well, it's because it is.
I'll give Travis his due because he really upset. I even text you when I was watching this film, and we don't usually do this.
I like Travis, but
I couldn't stand him. He did my fucking head in. He just. Do you know when you instantly just dislike somebody?
Oh, he is supposed to be like unlikable. I know what you mean.
I will give him his due.
Mm-hmm.
He knew they would fuck him over as soon. Like they cut 100%. The line. So he went down first. He said, "Do you think I'm going to screw you?" Like, I know I'm dealing with criminals. I'm dealing with killers. Mm-hmm. There's no way in hell I'm going to give you the money and expect you not to cut the line while I'm halfway down. Yeah. So I get that. But he was all right with the pilot doing it. Doesn't matter because the pilot's the pilot.
But you know what I mean, though? Like, you watch that sequence and it feels like it's it's obviously high octane, but because it's kind of actually shot and they actually did it, it looks more legit. But you're like, oh, this is like a proper, almost like it feels like a Tom Clancy movie at that point.
Yeah.
And then you compare that with the nonsense you get at the end. Again, it's that feeling that you're watching two different movies. But yeah, I really forgot how awesome that whole sequence is.
Well, on the plane as well. Mm-hmm. Just before you find out that Travers was the one that turns, every FBI agent there or Treasury agent could have been the one to turn because they are bad guys in any other film.
100%.
The FBI 100%. Agent, I've known him for loads of films, and he's usually a bad guy. Bruce McGill always ends up being like the corrupt, like lawyer or copper or something like that. And then the random cannon fodder guy as well.
They all look very comfortable holding an Uzi, put it that way.
An Uzi?
A fucking Uzi. Why the hell have they got, why have they got Uzis? They seem to have far too much power, these federal agents.
Use your treasury badge, use all the money you got to take, and use your standard issue Uzi.
Yeah, I mean, it was the early 90s, and Uzis were very popular around that time, but I don't think they were standard issue in any form of...
Do you know you mentioned the ending as well? We jumped from the ending to the beginning, but I wanted to say on the ending, best line of the film, and I laughed out loud with Hal to the FBI guys on the radio. If you're looking for Quaylen, try about 4,000 feet south of here. He'll be the one wearing the helicopter. Like, it made me laugh. Made absolutely no sense because the helicopter fell before Quaylen, so Quaylen landed on it. But yeah, good little.
It's still, there are some good lines, but again, you watch that sequence, it feels like, well, like I said, Tom Clancy. It reminded me a little bit of The Dark Knight Rises, the intro there. And amazingly, it's like they had to shoot that in the US, despite the fact that a lot of this movie is actually shot in Europe. It's shot in the Dolomites rather than America, in Italy. But it was illegal in Europe due to a lack of available safety measures for that shot. So the stuntman was paid an extra $1 million by Stallone himself, as insurance just wouldn't cover it. And it certainly was, I'm not sure if it still is, but it was in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most expensive aerial stunt of all time. And it's almost strange because when you watch it, unlike, the obvious comparison is Air Force One, when they do the jump between the two planes, they really sell you on how dramatic it is. Yeah. Whereas in this, the guy did it, it's super dangerous, but it's so low key. He just does it. Travis just goes across, and that isn't the emphasis of the sequence. The emphasis is the dudes waking up and the money hanging out the plane. It all looks very cool, but the big stunt, they don't do a very good job of selling it, despite the fact that it's amazing. It's a really weird one.
Another one I wanted to bring up. Sorry, it is.
No, sorry.
It just made me realize, but you're right. It is low key and it is amazing. It looks great. It looks practical. It looks so good. What didn't look good, and again, I think I've mentioned it a couple of times. I'm not a bomb expert.
You're not a bomb expert, no.
No.
We should say that, right? Make clear things up, just in case anybody thinks otherwise. So,
but the countdown, the timer seemed to be part of the plane, and he plugged the C4 into the part of the plane. Like, I don't get it. Again,
no, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It really doesn't. But it doesn't. It makes more sense than they reference the fact that they've got 100 million in those boxes, specifically from the Denver Mint. Now, the Denver Mint only makes coins. So if that was 100 million in Denver Mint coins, it would weigh 2,500 tons. Needless to say, I don't think it's getting into those little ass boxes. But I would always go to say, like, the money is almost kind of like, it's the, I guess you'd call it the MacGuffin of the movie. It's what they're really chasing. But even that kind of falls by the wayside and everything just becomes mental instead. It's like it can't decide if it wants to be a fetch the money movie or a survival movie. And it doesn't quite pick its sides.
They also don't seem that upset that they're losing their money. The first, it's only 3 cases, 100 mil between 3. The first case goes within, but the first case goes within 20 minutes.
Yeah. And that's their fault. Make no mistake.
So you're down to 66.6 mil. But if it's, and then he burns the other 33 mil, I'm guessing, in the night.
That's a lot. Does he need to burn all of it? I mean, you can surely keep a bit, dude.
And I appreciate the 33 mil is still a lot of money. But when you're losing 2/3 of it, you've got to be thinking at some point, you know what, maybe we should just cut our losses.
Well, the thing is, like you said, I know there's the whole thing, well, at least there's one more box, but I thought they'd be more upset about the fact that, out of our potential 100 million, we've just lost 33. But they seem super chill about it. Yeah. And again, maybe it just comes down to like how psycho they are. And it all starts with Lithgow. I mean, I was trying to basically put him on the bad guy rating, and it was tricky because I'm like, he's a 10 for shithousery. He's a 10 for evil accent. He's arguably a 10 for just being a psycho. But he's like a 1 for smarts, which is totally out of whack with everything else his character is about. So I'm like, as great as he is in this film, I love the fact that he's chewing the scenery. I can't put him amongst like the finest, villains of 80s and 90s cinema simply because he's too dumb. Like if he was just a dumb character and he's just like, he's just, physical or, being a psycho is this thing. But they're clearly trying to sell you on the idea that, again, he's the smartest guy in the room, but he never is.
And his plan goes to shit. And usually when you get these 80s and 90s villains and stuff, if their plan goes, they seem to have a contingency or they can move forward. But this guy, his plan goes to shit. So his next plan is they're in the middle of a snowstorm. They've called for help. And then they're expecting the helicopter. Where's the chopper? Chopper can't fly in this. Okay, so we're here to rescue you. Like, you should... I'm sorry, I know I want help, but if there's a snowstorm, we've crashed in the snowstorm. Maybe I should know that the helicopter's not coming.
Speaking of the crash, now I have 2 things with this. One, I couldn't decide how good or bad, because they use miniatures, don't they, obviously, for the crash sequence. I think, again, it's another one of those sequences which actually doesn't benefit from the transition to HD, because you can tell that it's miniatures. You think of the best examples. I don't like you going back to The Dark Knight, but there are sequences in The Dark Knight when I've seen the footage of how they shot it afterwards, and you realize it's miniatures. I'm like, fuck, I had no idea. It's unbelievable. Like you could never tell
the truck flipping over.
Yeah. All that stuff. You're like, the stuff in the tunnels in Chicago. I know it's supposed to be Gotham, but it's clearly based on, it's in Chicago, but a lot of that was just miniatures. Just can't tell the difference. Whereas this, you can clearly see that the plane is a miniature, the surroundings are miniatures, all that jazz. My bigger issue, however, is just how nonplussed everyone is with the news that the plane is going down. Nobody seems to make a big deal of it. And then B, once they all survive a plane crash in the mountains, it's water off a duck's back. Nobody seems at all. Nobody's in shock. Nobody's flustered. I know they're bad guys and all, but it's a fucking plane crash in the mountain. They're like, wow, that was something, wasn't it? They don't even give you that.
Because they're all blaming Travers as well. Because it's like, if you would have just sent the money first, we could have just disconnected the line and we'd be on our way. But because you decided to come down first, it's your fault, you prick.
And he did, he has that weird line as well, doesn't he? Where he's just like, oh, about surviving this. He's like, oh, you probably
don't bother to buckle up. You may not want to survive this.
That's some cold shit. That is. It's like one of my favorite lines actually in the plane sequence just before that, where they have the guy on, like, he's just been shot. Like, oh, what should we do with him? And the guy looks and goes, get him to a hospital, and then just immediately throws him out of the plane. I was like, wowzers. He's fucking.
You got those good lines, and then you got some shit lines. There was two that stood out, like between Quaylen and Gabe, and it's like, I must say, you're a real piece of work. I must say, you're a real piece of shit. Like that terrible line, terrible delivery.
You can see there are some sequences where you could just see Stallone had to be reined in. Again, it's between Quaylen and Gabe at the end of the film. It's like, you really are resilient, Walker. As resilient as you are handsome. Like, he doesn't say the second line, but it feels like Stallone wanted to write that second line. I missed
that line then.
No, he didn't say that. I would have loved it if he'd said it. Oh, God, you are resilient, but so handsome, Gabe. But no, it wouldn't have felt that strange if he had just kept going and delivered that line as well. So, sorry, I jumped in there.
No, that's okay. That's fine. Because the other one was at the beginning. Nobody in the history of ever has ever called somebody a rock jock.
No. It's just in this film. And
it's fucking awful.
Some of it doesn't even make sense. I'm not even sure if you class it bad or just nonsensical. But when you get, I keep calling him Cool Runnings because I've forgotten his name. When he has...
how could you... his real name?
Yeah.
Leon.
Is that his real name?
Yeah, Leon.
Cool Runnings. Okay, cool. He says to him, I am going to ask you 3 times. And you're like, why? Why don't you just ask him once and just make it clear you mean business? You're just kind of elongating the sequence. It's just stupid.
They were trying to set him up as the monster of monsters as well. He didn't
he had very exuberant kung fu, that's for sure.
He didn't do a lot before that. You just see it in his face and everything, and some of the lines he says. He's the guy that's going to be trouble. And then he's the guy that had it the worst way. He's basically probably now still stuck on that mountain, on that stalagmite.
I was going to say that's the weirdest death, but the one, I can't remember who the guy is. He was one of the least memorable of the bad guys, obviously. That Stallone Stallone was initially turned into a sled, and then he turned the other guy into a sled. But of course, the effects of Stallone using him as a sled were, as you would expect, basically half of his face being torn up. Whereas Stallone, for a lot of that ridge, whatever you want to call it, is being used as a sled. Now, 1, that would cut you to shreds, and 2, it doesn't make any sense. You can't use a human as a sled. It's like something out of a fucking cartoon, but we're supposed to
3, that was the longest slope in the world ever.
So long.
But I believe that was Heldon. That was the dude. That was the dude that was shooting the grenades up.
Oh, okay, yeah. That fucking genius. But even that sequence has. I'm not sure if you noticed, but when Quaylen and the rest of his goons come up over the top, it's shot like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. There's a light source behind them, which gives them a cool silhouette. But you're like, where's that light source coming from? It's the same as Kevin Costner when he makes his triumphant return in Sherwood Forest when everyone thinks he's dead. He's shot, he's lit from below, so he casts this big dramatic hero shadow. And of course, they just have an evil shadow, whatever you want to call it. But where's the fucking light source coming from? It's such a weird movie, that combination of smart and dumb at every turn. It just about gets away with it, but it's a weird ass mix. It's very much, if ever a movie had 1 foot in the 80s and 1 foot in the 90s, it's Cliffhanger. It's almost as if they wrote a movie for the 90s, but then they were like, but we've got Stallone on board. So we 80s it up a bit, not only in terms of his screenwriting, but also just in terms of his presence. They're like, well, this is still Stallone. We've got to put some dumb shit in there, you know?
Did you recognize Travers' boss from the FBI?
Yes, I can't remember what he's from, though. The black guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was Lance Henriksen's detective boss in Terminator.
Oh,
Traxler.
Fuck, of course he was. Of course he was. That's a great.
And he was also one of the generals in the room in Mars Attacks.
Oh yes, oh god,
Yeah.
that's a film we should really do on the podcast. That's another film I've seen maybe once or twice, but I've not seen it in a long time. Maybe I just want to do it because Tom Jones is in it. Maybe that's it. Just we're
And
doing a Welsh movie podcast and we haven't done Mars Attacks. Crazy, crazy.
and another one is he was in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan as a character called Tyrell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you haven't seen that, have you?
No.
Well, if we're ever going to convince you about Star Trek, I think it probably would be Wrath of Khan. It's just a fun movie. And again, like this film has a Julie epic score, which is fun. But my God, Wrath of Khan has one of the all-time movie scores. One of the all-time movie scores. I know when you think of Star Trek, you just think of that opening, which I totally understand. But man, Wrath of Khan's different.
We'll cover it. I'm not against Star Wars. I've never been into the films. To be fair,
it's weird because I was always into the movies. Like I've watched bits of the TV show, and largely because my brother was into the TV shows when we were younger. So we watched like Deep Space Nine and Voyager.
Never
and
watched them. Never watched Next Gen. Never watched any of them.
I watched bits and bobs, but I never got it. Like I was always happy enough watching them. I watched bits of Discovery. I think that's the most recent one. And I kind of like I lose interest, blah blah blah. I like them in movie form, and I've watched all the movies, and they are a real mixed bag. But the highs are really high. But make no mistake, the lows are incredibly fucking.
I've watched the Chris Pine ones. I've watched Discovery, and I've watched the Brave New Worlds or Strange New Worlds, wherever it is.
Oh yeah.
So that's my intro into Star Trek. But I've never thought about going back for some reason. I just because I figured at some point you were going to have me do it on the podcast.
Yeah, because I have a similar thing with, and I know we've gone off piece, no pun intended there. I have a similar thing with James Bond, where I grew up with, I got the tail end of Timothy Dalton when I was really young.
Yeah.
Like many kids my age, I got like bang into, GoldenEye because of the video game and the movies. And I've gone to the cinema and watched every James Bond movie since they've come out. And I like them too. I'm not a massive fan, but I like them just fine. But I've never felt compelled to go back and watch the Roger Moore or even the Sean Connery ones. And I think a big part of that is maybe because of Austin Powers kind of ruining it. I literally went back and tried to watch a bit of Moonraker, and I know that's fundamentally one of the sillier ones, but it's literally one dial down from Austin Powers. They're ridiculous movies. I should probably go back and watch From Russia with Love with Sean Connery or something like that. But I just can't be bothered. It's similar to yourself. Like if you were a Bond guy and you're like, I want to do like Dr. No, I'm like, cool, let's give it a go. I'm just not going to watch it off my own back. Exactly the same as you with Star Trek. I need to kind of give you the nudge towards it, I suppose. But you probably, you've watched the TV shows. You'd be fine jumping in. But I'm a little concerned you might respond to it the way you responded to Star Wars. So maybe that's my concern. But
that's why you haven't done it. I can't ruin any more. He can't ruin any more of my childhood. He's fucked up Karate Kid.
I think
He's destroyed Star Wars.
I never had the same attachment to Star Trek as I did to Star Wars growing up. So maybe I wouldn't give a fuck. But anyway, back to the movie. What I was going to suggest is like this movie is all good and well. When I was watching it, I couldn't help but imagine an alternative movie to this, which didn't involve Sylvester Stallone. It's basically, you just see it from Quaylen and Travers' point of view. They crash on the mountain. They can't get in touch with anyone. And basically, it's the movie Alive, only everyone's an asshole. So they have to like, or like that Liam Neeson one where he ends up fighting wolves. It's a cross between those two movies, but they're all just bad guys. I'm like, has anyone ever done a movie like that where they crash and of course they have to survive, but they're all cutthroat motherfuckers? I'm like, I would love to see that movie. And suddenly them all being psycho totally works because they end up just killing each other off and double crossing each other and all that jazz. And suddenly I'm like, I think I'd prefer that to Cliffhanger.
It's the Raiders of the Lost Ark theory, isn't it? Without Indiana Jones, the Nazis would have still found it. The Ark gone
like
on.
These guys just would have killed themselves.
Without Gabe or Hal, these guys would have just died on top of the mountain.
Yeah, somehow it somehow just ends regardless with Quaylen and a helicopter at the bottom of a ridge and everyone else dead.
The way I see it as well, Travers is he's frozen like Jack is from The Shining. He's 100%. Just sat there, just fucking
you would have the
ice
look
coming
well,
off his nose and stuff as well.
It's straight. You mentioned it earlier, the fact that you hated Travers. Now, when you say you hate Travers, do you hate him in the sense that you hate his performance, you hate the actor, or you've bought into the idea he's supposed to be a dick and it's just really effective?
It's the effectiveness of his dickishness is what it is.
That's a great way of putting it.
It's
we should send that to Rex Lynn. Rex Lynn, by the way, you were so effective at being a dick that Rob fucking hates you. It's like the ultimate example of that is the kid from Game of Thrones who played like the fucking
Joffrey or what? Joffrey,
yeah. Joffrey, he was so evil that you can't put him in another film now because it's just like I fucking hate that guy. I fucking hate that guy. So Rex Lynn, That's how successful you were at being just a bureaucratic bellend.
It really was. It was yelling when he didn't need to yell. It was trying to, like, with this gang of killers, it was like, I'm the one who's in charge. I'm the one who has the like mini TV screen. I don't just everything about him grated to me. But I appreciate that's what his character was. So yeah, it's not that I hate Rex Lynn. It's not that I hated the idea of Travers. He just did it so effectively. It really got to me.
But for the same reason, like just because he's successful. One, I was surprised. One thing that upset me is the fact that when he made this film, he was 37 years old. I'm like, man, that is 5 years younger than me when he made this film. I'm like, God damn, the guy looks 52. But he looks the part. And what I did like is that obviously what does add a bit of spice is not just that they're all evil. There is the whole, oh, these are the bad guys, and this is Travers, who's obviously double-crossing the government to get his money. He's not the usual kind of like, oh, I'm in over my head. I'm working with these guys means to an end, but I'm clearly out of my depth. Like Travers is just as much of a psycho. He's just as much of a dick as those guys. And I like the fact that it feels like he can hold his own. Like he doesn't back down to anyone. It feels like, oh, if he gets into a fight, I'm like, man, it looks like Travers and his fucking awesome mustache might be able to take care of business. But I agree with you. He's a dick, but I found his performance super fun.
One thing that upset me as well, as part of the marketing that we do on the socials and stuff, I like to take our faces and put them into the characters if I can, as you've known. Sometimes it's affected, sometimes there's a laugh. Like me looking like Wes from Mad Max 2, I think is great.
Unbelievable. I mean, you're basically the same people. It's crazy.
You looking like
it looks so convincing. You know, like you do a double check. It's like, is that Rob's face or is that just the original? I was like, fuck, it is Rob's face. That's amazing.
You looking like Julian Sands in Arachnophobia is great.
Yeah, but no doubt.
I did me as a Rex.
It's great. I love it even more. The fact that the first thing you said to me, you sent me a message a few days ago after you watched the movie, is how much you hated Travers. And then you sent me a picture of you as Travers. I was like, it's perfect. It's fucking perfect. Because if you hate him, you make for an absolutely brilliant Travers.
Like if I start to shave my head.
Yeah, you've already got the mustache. If we just shave the middle, leave the side, which is classic 90s like bald guy Barney. It's like he doesn't think to go bald. He's like, now I'm keeping all the action on the side. I'm just going bald as fuck down the middle. If we just shave them in the head, you're like Travers ready to go. We just put the coat on. It would be like such a deep cut Halloween outfit. Yeah. If like you just showed up as Travers and we were like, who the fuck is Rob? It's like, oh, it's Travers from Cliffhanger. Most people are like, who the fuck is Travers from Cliffhanger? Oh, he's like the 8th build guy in 1993's action thriller Cliffhanger. That'd be awesome.
I'd have to keep a picture next to me just to show people like, oh no, I'm this guy.
Look, this guy. And you'd be like when the scenes where he's like next to Sylvester Stallone. Look, he was in that movie. You know, Cliffhanger. You've seen it, right? It's on Amazon Prime again. You should watch it. Oh, yeah. Okay, Rob. No problem.
Yeah. Nobody talk to that guy. Just leave Rob alone. Just
quickly, speaking of people being in fancy dress, earlier in the movie, I mentioned the fact that Gabe has got this kind of like all-time look, like, you know, with the coat and the shirt and stuff. He shows up at their old, you know, house in the woods together up in the mountains. And yes, she is wearing a coat over it, but it does appear like Jess is dressed as a Ghostbuster. And I'm not sure fucking why. It looks like she's wearing a Ghostbusters outfit. It's not even like, oh, that looks close to it. I'm like, that just looks like if her coat kind of came open a bit and it said like Spengler on the side, I'm like, yeah. They've just taken it directly from Ghostbusters and just used it in this movie.
It's like they only had one Rocky Mountain Rescue uniform. So they thought, you know, well, let's just dress her and put a coat over it. You'll be fine. Because I see what it just looks like overalls. It looks like when Rick Moranis puts on the...
Yeah. It looks like somebody's stolen a Ghostbusters outfit and just put it on. They're just like, well, don't tell anyone. I'll just put my coat over the top. Very strange. Very strange. Did you want to add anything else? Because we've kind of jumped around a bit, but we've done the ending. We've done the fact that, you know, Lithgow is absolutely insane in this movie. But I think we're ready to move on to...
we've even randomly covered all of their deaths.
Yeah, and Star Trek and Star Wars, apparently. Who fucking knew? In terms of favorite scenes, I mean, the plane sequence came as a genuinely pleasant surprise. I forgot how awesome it was, but the correct answer is unequivocally the opening sequence. I agree with you. The jumps from on location to on set are a little bit jarring, But it's an amazing cold opening. It's what sticks with me. It's what everyone remembers about this movie, and it makes everybody terrified of climbing. That drop sequence is exactly the nightmare scenario everybody imagines in those situations. Should she have been up there? Absolutely not. Is Hal a dick? 100%. But it did lead to one of the great, I would say, all-time great movie deaths, because you get those three shots: the wide shot in slow motion, the shot, the Hans Gruber shot, what I'll call it, and the shot where they show, you hear the wind coming up as her falling and she's still screaming. I'm like, this is so harrowing for a fucking, action movie, like the start of an action movie, which I always thought of as being maybe a bit more on the family friendly end of the spectrum. Absolutely wrong. So many people die in this film, and there's quite a bit of blood. It's a proper action movie, but that's my favorite sequence.
See above.
Yeah, it has
I mean,
to be, right?
You're right. I mean, I couldn't go for anything else when you said the correct answer is. Like, if I turn around and say, "Oh, no, it's definitely
go fuck yourself."
It's definitely the scene where Leon gets stabbed.
Yeah, or the bit where they use Stallone as a sled. Fun sequences for sure. They don't match up with the opening sequence.
No,
so.
and I couldn't say any better. I never can say any better than how you put it.
I'm incredibly eloquent. It's a gift. It's a gift. I don't want to tell you.
I mean, Cliff looked good. Him climbing, great.
Yeah, spot on. That's what people are really here for. That kind of input. In terms of loves, number one, the score by Trevor Jones. As I said, it is literally just Last of the Mohicans with a few bar changes. But luckily, Last of the Mohicans is one of the greatest scores of modern-ish times, and it's always kind of. Ugh, it's very upsetting. Number two, cinematography shot like a 90s movie, but like in a good way. We've talked about this before, like when we did what was it last week, The Faculty, the fact that it looks like it could have been a movie shot today but set in 1998, I think it was. This doesn't have that. This looks like a 90s movie, but I mean that in a very positive way. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. And number three, just fantastic pacing. There's no fat on the bone in this movie whatsoever. I'm going to sneak in a fourth and just say the cast, because it's quite a memorable cast. But I think what really sells this movie and what gets you over, because we've picked this movie apart to a certain extent. Some of it is really dumb, but there's never really enough time for you to dwell on things. It just goes action, 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 dodgy sequence with Gabe and Jess, action, 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 and it literally goes credits, end movie.
Yeah.
And it's never anything less than fun when you're watching it, even if it doesn't always make sense. So those are my loves.
Now, for me, it was the shots on location. I think when you had those shots on location, they looked great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was so jarring then to just go to the sets. So for the remastered version, you could clearly tell the difference, and it got a bit jarring. But the on location shots, absolutely great. The way the camera in the helicopter pans over the tower and everything, it looks fantastic. To see the climber hanging underneath the cliff,
to sell you on the location, like if you've got the budget for it and you're like, this is where they are, it does a lot of the heavy lifting for the rest of the film.
With you, the pacing, like I said, it moves at a clip. She dropped herself. All of a sudden, it's 6 months later. Gabe's back because he's been working somewhere else. He's come to get Jess. But
you don't even know where. It doesn't matter. Let's just get to more climbing. It's fine.
I love it. I've come to get you. Okay, like there's no explanation. I'm not working on a ranch anymore. I'm not doing. I'm just come to get you. Just get in the car. We're going.
And it's almost like they were aware that they had like no chemistry, because they jumped past that really quickly. And even at the end, they don't have like a big romantic kiss or anything like that. It's almost like swept under the carpet. It's just like, this has just become an action movie. Forget about those two. They're vaguely together. We know you don't give a shit. We know it doesn't really work. Let's move on and not mention it again.
It was the real point, and I never should have brought this up earlier. The real pointless lines to make Sylvester Stallone sound better in regards to, Michael Rooker's taken the North Ridge, so if you take the East Ridge, you'll beat him. Well, if the East Ridge is quicker, why hasn't Michael taken that? There's people that need insulin on the top of the fucking mountain. Is it just to have that, again, establishing shot of Sylvester Stallone already on the ledge doing his little breathing into his hands thing while Michael Rooker comes up?
Yeah, well, they do it a few times, don't they? They throw in like sneaky lines, like only 6 people in the world could do that climb and all that jazz. Yeah. It's like, he's a climber, not an action hero, but they keep letting you know it's like, oh, but this guy's the shit. In case it wasn't clear when he took his top off that he's in much better shape than Hal and much more handsome. It's like, no, this guy's one of the fucking best to ever do it. So they do sneak it into the movie rather than kind of throw it in your face like they would maybe a again in the 80s, but it's there, make no mistake. You can tell it's like Sylvester Stallone wrote this. He's like, make sure they know that I'm the shit, right? Yeah. Stone, they know. Yeah, but I'm like the best climber. How about like one of the top 6 in the world? Sure, why not? Let's just go with that. Silly.
And I'll give him his due. My third one is Stallone. It's clearly a Stallone film. It's a Stallone vehicle. Everyone else is just on the back burner when it comes to Stallone, but he does really well in his standalone scenes, in his action scenes. You know, when it's all moving, I think he does great with it.
I've got that written down here. I mean, obviously Lithgow's fun, chewing the scenery and stuff, but what elevates this movie, and I think what ultimately makes so memorable is, again, the Stallone X factor. Whatever you might say about him, we mentioned a whole bunch of times on this podcast, you know, you might not be the best actor in the world. I actually think Stallone's a pretty good actor when given the right material. But what he is undeniably is a movie star. And you see that in the film. When the camera's on him, you're like, the fucking camera loves him. And you are drawn to him. You're like, you couldn't just have this movie and just have any old schmo in that role. It wouldn't be the same kind of film. It's a unique beast because it has Sylvester Stallone in it. He's the one thing which is arguably irreplaceable. Like, as great as Lithgow is, you could still replace him, I think, with another actor. Whereas Stallone, you're like, no, this needs to be Stallone. That's what makes Cliffhanger. And it's because he is just a fucking movie star in the old-fashioned sense of the term.
Absolutely. Hates?
Hates. I mean, one of the biggest issues is that the best sequences are front-loaded. The movie never quite matches the height. Yeah. Obviously, we mentioned that the best sequence is literally the opening sequence, but the second best action set piece is the second set piece. It's the bit with the planes. And the rest of the movie is perfectly decent, but nothing quite matches the opening 2 sequences. So you're on it's an element of diminishing returns, I suppose, for the rest of the movie. Even if the rest of it's perfectly fine, it just doesn't live up to the first. The best 20 minutes of the movie, I would argue, are the first 20 odd minutes of this film, but that's my opinion. 2, the bad guys really are dumb. Like, they are so dumb. They just make so many mistakes. There's just I just don't think they ever do the right thing. Other than Crystal, when she does the phone call, she does one smart thing, and like Lithgow, like his character has to bring attention to it. Oh, would you have thought of that? Look how smart she is. And then she's like, what? She's the smartest one? What am I going to do? I'm going to shoot her. Give me a fucking break. And 3, again, about the bad guys, I would argue that they're just like too evil. Like, they're clownishly evil. The plan's never going to work. You're all going to turn on each other. Surely they must have looked around and gone, guys, we can't all be in the same room together. We'll fucking kill each other. What are you talking about? We're too evil. We're too evil. And 4, I've got to sneak it in because my wife insisted, they killed poor Frank. They killed poor Frank. And that's linked to the fact that, number 3, they're simply too evil. It was unnecessary. Nobody, well, we know why it happened, but it didn't need to happen. Sweet Frank.
I would have had your wife's back because that was number 1, the killing of Frank.
Oh, so sad. So unnecessary. We get it. They're bad guys. Just let Frank live.
Number 2, the death of Travers, the set scene. Not so much his death, but all of that just, again, really took me out of it. And if I hadn't watched a remastered, maybe I didn't, but that's the one I watched, and that's it. Do you know what it felt like? All the
sequences, like I said, it listed, like, to the point where I felt the need to speak out loud my thoughts while I was watching the film. I'm like, my God, that is such a set.
It felt like the Titanic set in Time Bandits.
It did a bit. That's
Time Bandits, yeah.
It took you out of the film in that as well, where it's like, and that film has a bunch of sets, but like that one, even and as you already mentioned earlier, there are a bunch of sequences when they jump between on location and on set, and you can see it. You know, they didn't do a good enough job of blurring the lines, but that sequence is just such a set. It feels like they've walked into like a ride almost from like Disneyland, like Cliffhanger the ride. It would look like that. You know, they didn't do enough to make it look realistic, sadly.
And I mugged my third hate off because you really upset me when you told me that Rex Linn was 37. Finding out that Rex Linn is 37 in this fucking film has upset me no end.
I'm not far off Lithgow either. Lithgow's 47 when he did this. That's only 5 years older than I am now. Yeah. I'm 5 years away from Lithgow in Cliffhanger. Do you know how fucking upsetting that is? That's like genuinely upsetting.
I know.
Between that and being 5 years older than fucking Travis, give me a break. This is one of the worst days of my life watching this movie.
Lithgow must have been upset. You're 37. I'm fucking 47. Look at you, motherfucker.
Look at the state of you. How did this happen? How many cigarettes do you smoke a day? This is insane. But it used to happen. Early 90s used to, even in the 90s. If you go back and watch old-fashioned football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, from like the Premier League. So I'm not talking about the 70s with the sideburns and the hair. You go back and look some of the footballers from the early 90s, and some of them look 67 years old, and they're playing top-level football. It's insane. They just aged differently back then. Any alternative titles for this film? There shouldn't be, because Cliffhanger is dope, but I'm sure there will be.
Oh, yeah, there's a couple.
Go for
Argentina, Total Risk.
No, that's an Alec Baldwin action vehicle.
Yep. Austria, Cliffhanger. Only the strong survive.
Unnecessary. Completely unnecessary.
French Canada. The Cliff of Death.
It's not, though, is it? It's not the Cliff of Death. It's not about the cliff. Like, the cliff is almost inconsequential. It's just a mountain range. That's it.
Denmark, Cliffhanger. On the brink of the abyss.
Oh, my God. A bit overwrought, shall we say.
Estonia, Mountaineer.
No, it's Pony.
I did Only the Strong Survive. Greece, Barometric Low.
Okay, that has to be a translation thing. Has to be barometric low. It's so stupid.
Hungary, Cliffhanger, Hanging Game.
No.
Italy, Cliffhanger, The Last Challenge.
That's no.
Oh, this is fantastic.
The Last Challenge.
Yeah.
Just has nothing to do with the movie.
Norway, Cliffhanger, On the Edge of the Cliff.
Sure. Again, a little bit on the nose, but whatever.
Romania, Fight at Height.
Fight at Height. I actually quite like Fight at Height. That's the best one so far. It's dumb as fuck, but I do quite like Fight at Height. Because that's actually what they do for all the talking cliffs and stuff. Most people die because they're fighting at height. So I'll give them that. Yeah.
Russia, Alpinist or Alpinist, however you want to say
it. Whichever way, it doesn't sound great.
Slovenia, Climber.
Just Climber?
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of removes all the threats. Like Cliffhanger implies that you are climbing, but it's like there's going to be trouble here. Whereas Climber is just like, oh, we're just climbing today. It's fine.
Taiwan, Warrior of the Peak.
No, sounds like a kung fu movie.
Ukraine, Rock Climber.
Again, it doesn't sound threatening nearly enough. It's just they're just going for a pleasant climb in the countryside.
This is going to be a translation issue. Vietnam, last one. Cliff Climbing Chio.
Yeah, we don't know what the fuck that is. And if you're wondering, do we have any answers? No, we don't. We're just
I don't look into them. I just read them.
No, we're just. I don't do it. Do any fucking research. What do you think this is, a professional podcast? Jesus Christ. Speaking of which, any facts? I've got two. Just want to sneak them in. This is the last TriStar movie to feature the original logo, which I thought was worth mentioning because when I was watching the intro, I was like, man, TriStar is one of the great production company intros. I always think of like. Is it Scott Free? That's a good modern one. I always quite like that. And the reason it stood out is I'm not sure if it's always been the case or whether it's just the reissue, whatever. But Studio Canal is one of the production companies aligned with this, and they have one of the worst intros of all time. Like you have one job. At the start of the film to have those. I always think of like Cannon had a really memorable one,
or Bruckheimer,
or Bruckheimer, or New Line Cinema, stuff like that. The Studio Canal one is so fucking hipstery bullshit where the music is off key and it's like, oh, we make kooky French movies. Go fuck yourself, Studio Canal. I don't know why I felt so strongly, but it was like before I even found out about this being the last TriStar one, I was like, man, that TriStar fucking production company logo was cool. And then I went to Studio Canal and I was visibly upset, my wife said. So anyway, it lent itself to a fact, so I want to bring that up. And I'm not sure if you've gone back and rewatched it, but that opening sequence with the drop is wonderfully parodied in Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. All they've done is basically the exact same sequence. No, it's a raccoon.
Oh, raccoon.
Which is really good. And you really don't want that raccoon to die, but it's dumb as fuck as you'd imagine, but it's good fun. So if you get a chance to have a look at it after the podcast, I'd suggest you rewatch Ace Ventura. Not the whole movie, because it's a up and down movie to say the least, but that parody sequence with the raccoon is fantastic.
That lends well into the first fact about death of animals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if Sylvester Stallone actually walked away with any money on this. You've already done the fact that he paid $1 million to do the shot at the beginning, the plane sequence. Sneak preview audiences saw a scene where a rabbit gets killed by gunfire. Their reaction was so strong. Sylvester Stallone invested $100,000 of his own money to have the scene reshot so that the rabbit escaped.
Jeez Louise. The rabbit's still dead, though, but I guess you can have less people complaining about it, I suppose. So, yeah, fair enough. People do get very upset about those things. I mean, when that woman put a cat in a bin, fuck, everyone went insane. I went insane. I was like, why would you do that to a cat? Anyway, moving on.
TriStar Pictures and Carol Co. Pictures planned a sequel in '94 called The Dam, which was described as Die Hard in a dam, and would have Sylvester Stallone's character from this movie fighting terrorists who took over Hoover Dam. But it never went beyond the developmental stage. Stallone tried to resurrect the project again in 2008, but it never happened. Do you know what I want to do? I want to do the one where I fight terrorists in Hoover Dam. That sounds great. You already did something where you were in a tunnel. No. Hoover Dam.
Yeah, that one was pretty bad, though. Daylight was pretty bad. I bet you love Daylight.
I don't remember it.
Oh, fair play. Yeah. I thought that might have been one of those like sneaky Rob specials where you're like, man, I've seen Daylight like 27 times. It's not a classic. It's not terrible. It's just not very good.
All I remember from that film is randomly Viggo Mortensen's in it.
God, I totally forgot about that. Fairness. Good shout.
To demonstrate his faith in the safety equipment, director Rennie Harlin put on a harness and flung himself out on a cable over a cliff. Awesome. I'm going to assume he did that before he filmed the scene of Sarah, what was it, dropping herself?
Yeah, I guess that puts everyone off pretty much. It's just like, wait, can this actually fucking happen? Or are we just doing this for the movie? It's like, well, it could. It won't, but it could, you know?
Oh, mate, I didn't know this when we started doing this and you started mocking calves. Not mocking calves, I was mocking calves. Dedicated to Wolfgang Gulich, Sylvester Stallone's double in the film, who was killed in a car accident shortly after filming had finished.
I wasn't mocking his calves. I was saying like his calves actually look better than Stallone's. That was the whole point. Like his calves look absolutely amazing. But yeah, it was like he goes through all that and then dies like after the movie driving back because he fell asleep at the wheel supposedly and drove off the road. Crazy.
During one climbing scene, Rennie Harlin complained that the safety lines were visible. So the stuntmen performed the climbing without any safety lines.
Any of that stuff freaks me out. Have you ever seen the movie? Is it called Free Climb? That documentary where the dudes, they just fucking climb up mountains with no safety rigs whatsoever. Like you've got to be a special kind of crazy. But you see, even just the pictures, they were ones in like the National Geographic of them like up halfway up a mountain and they kind of make a tent or he's just on the edge of a ledge and he's just like looking up and taking a picture. There's no safety equipment and he's on this tiny little ledge. I'm just like, how fucking insane is that? All you need is like, what happens if you get cramp? You're fucked. You are fucked. One mistake, dead. I just literally cannot get my head around it. The idea of being stuck up there is beyond terrifying to me.
Christopher Walken was originally cast as Quaylen, but left production before filming began. So John Lithgow was cast at the last minute. Fucking Christopher Walken. Awesome. Don't put on that seatbelt. That was my Walken.
You sounded very British. Yeah. From going, what? No, don't put on the seatbelt. You know, it just... Where's the money, Gabe? Gabe, where's the money? You know, that's not great, but it was a lot better than your Cockney Walken.
Hey, mate,
what's going on here, Gabe?
Usually it comes out Indian, so I'm all right with going Cockney, apparently.
It's fine. My wife is Welsh, and if she tries to do a Welsh accent, it comes out Jamaican. It's fucking amazing. But hilariously, if I ask her to do a Jamaican accent, she can't do it. She can only accidentally do a Jamaican accent when she's trying to be Welsh. It's fantastic. I hope she can't hear me. Jesus Christ.
You're going to get slapped. Last one for me. Rennie Harlin's first choice to play Quaylen. Any ideas?
No idea.
David Bowie.
Ooh, that would have been interesting. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, you know, I'm very happy with Lithgow in this film, but he's not irreplaceable. And both of those, you're like, man, I would have liked to have seen either one of those. Not like, you know, I'm not immediately like, oh, you know, fucking get rid of Lithgow. But I'm like, if you're going to replace him, replace him with Bowie or fucking, or Walken. That sounds awesome.
Have you heard about the bear?
The bear with
the bear on the tower. The tower where she dropped off.
That's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I know. Good. I like that.
I know. It's
I was so proud that that came into my head. I was like, oh, I can't wait to say this.
I'm over the moon. Like this has made my day. It's made my fucking day. In terms of hopes for future, so this is where we ask a question: remake, sequel, let it die, or leave well alone. You've already mentioned there. I would have liked a sequel. It wasn't essential, but I would have happily watched a sequel either in 95, 96, or when he was talking about resurrecting it in 2008, because that was around the time where obviously he was resurrecting Rocky for Rocky 6. Or Rocky Balboa, if you want to call it that, and for Rambo 4. We don't want it now. I don't want to see 76-year-old Stallone as Gabe.
A sequel, though, and this is the question with this one: a sequel of the premise or a sequel of the character? Like, did he do enough as Gabe where you want to see him in a different situation? Because like he's a climber in this. He's the world's or the sixth best climber or whatever we said. But he's not doing much climbing in Hoover Dam. There's going to be a scene where he climbs the front of it. Absolutely. But
100%. Yeah, there's some reason he's got to get into the building. The only way they can get into the dam or the building, whatever the fuck it is a motherfucker has to climb in. And that's the reason. It's the less dumb equivalent of like Armageddon, where we're like, oh, we're not going to send astronauts, we're going to send drillers because somebody has to drill. It's the same thing. We're not going to send a SWAT team. We're going to send the one guy who can climb up through the window. Well, what kind of experience does he have? Well, there was this one time where he's fighting this dude and he grabbed him by the crotch and he like pushed him above his head and threw a spike. It's like, how do you know that? Oh, he told me. Do you think that's true? I mean, it sounded a bit far-fetched, but I mean, he swears by it, so he must have something about him, So, no, I don't think a sequel necessarily ever made sense. I wouldn't have minded it back then. Definitely don't want to see it now. I don't want to see a remake. I don't, like you said, we made it clear early doors. One of the reasons this movie worked is because Sylvester Stallone's in it. I don't want to, the premise isn't interesting enough. It's a well-made movie based on a reasonably interesting premise, but not enough for me to think, oh, this needs to be kind of, brought back from the dead, so to speak.
Due to the point I just raised, I don't want a sequel because I don't want a sequel of the premise because you're just rehashing the first one. I don't want a sequel where you have Gabe in a different situation because he's not John McClane. Yeah, he's not put John McClane in this, and this. He's a guy who has one skill. It's climbing a mountain. You take him out of the mountain, he's going to get shot. I'm sorry.
And how many premises can you have, like action premises, beyond the one that we had? It's like, what, another bunch of terrorists accidentally land on a fucking mountain and they send Gabe, or Gabe accidentally comes across them? It doesn't make, it's a stretch. It's probably one of the reasons it didn't come to light, is because it's a stretch to put him in that situation again.
You'll never guess what they lost on the mountain. 4 briefcases of money.
Oh my God, make it. Yeah. Sign it. And that was the problem. This was 93, going into 94, 95. What wasn't there enough of? Cocaine. There just wasn't enough cocaine left in Hollywood to get this over the finish line. If they had made Cliffhanger in 87, I'm guessing Cliffhanger 2 with a bullet comes out in 89. But by 93, they've all laid off the yayo a little bit. So somebody in the room at least has gone, guys, I don't think this actually makes any sense. And it doesn't get made.
Yeah. And I don't want to see a remake. Like you said, Stallone was what made it. We don't need this premise. We've had this kind of premise. They've tried it loads of times. Vertical Limits. Other films I can't fucking remember.
I like movies on mountains. I like movies out in the wilderness. What was the fucking awesome one with the bear? The Edge? Is that what it's called? With Baldwin and
fucking hell, Baldwin's
Anthony Hopkins
on this podcast.
I know, right? Jesus Christ. And Anthony Hopkins. I tell you what, I could totally stand to rewatch that movie. I've only seen that movie once, but I mean, amazing cast. They fight a bear. Again, I'm just basically. Am I just listing movies with Welsh actors and Tom Jones? I'm like, we need to do all these movies with Welsh people in them. Jesus Christ.
Before you do that, no, that's okay. I was reading while you were talking. I was just reading the facts, the one above Rennie Howell and David Bowie, and I wasn't going to say it, but I really would love to have seen this film. So I'm gutted they never made it. So can I just go back to one more fact?
Yeah, go for it.
So Carol Coe had originally signed Sylvester Stallone to appear opposite John Candy in a comedy directed by John Hughes about feuding neighbors titled Bartholomew versus Neff. That's not the film. When the project was dropped, Stallone got involved in another Carol Coe project, Isobar, a sci-fi futuristic horror about genetically created monster who gets let loose on a speeding runaway train.
That sounds awesome.
I know. The movie was to have 90 million budget and Roland Emmerich was hired to direct the film. Oh, mate. But then, due to arguments he had with Carolco and producer Joel Silver about the script and control over the film, he walked away from Isobar and it ended up getting cancelled. While Emmerich went on to make Universal Soldier for Carolco, Stallone was first signed on to make another film with Rennie Harlin. For them, an action thriller disaster film, Gale Force, which would have had Stallone's character fighting modern pirates during a large hurricane. But once that film got cancelled as well, he and Harlan went on to make Cliffhanger for Caracol. So we got Cliffhanger, but I really want the monster on a train.
Yeah, I
or
saw
pirates. Yeah.
Yeah, they both sound dope.
Remembering the names. Well, that's.
I mean, those do sound dope. And yeah, the fact that the names immediately, like, it's like Isobar and Gale Force. I'm like, fuck, those sound cool. But we do live in a world where instead of those, we got Universal Soldier and Cliffhanger. So I'm not totally upset because
I'm all right. We got those. We've covered both of those on those podcasts. But
yeah. Universal Soldier in particular.
I take it now as a B movie. Give me a monster on a train, mate. I'd fucking have that right now.
Oh yeah, trains are a great setting. I mean, let's go back to Speed 2, shall we? Where they could have easily set that on a fucking train instead of a cruise liner.
But then that
would have been awesome if they'd taken a really hard left turn on it. It's set on a train. It's Sandra Bullock, but it's also a monster. It's just like
awesome.
That would have been.
But instead, we got Under Siege 2 on a train.
It was that, but that's another monster either, unless you count, of course, it's leading man, which based on what we've heard,
he's a bit of a monster, yeah.
He certainly is. So make a change. This is where we, if you can make one change to make this movie better. The obvious answer is make the bad guys a tad smarter. I would like Frank to live on and sell his artwork, of course, but the real answer is like the bad guys are just a little bit too dumb, sadly. And I would have liked more on location work, but sadly Sylvester was scared of heights, so they couldn't do all that much. So that's where we get the weird mix. So I'm picking like three things. I'm going to stick to one: bad guys smarter. That's my one change.
So I've gone bad guys as well. I've already mentioned it earlier on. We don't need that many bad guys. You need Travers, Quaylen, and Jet Fighter, whatever her name was. See, I forgot her name now. I call her Jessie at that point. Jet Pilot Crystal,
yeah.
Crystal / Jet Pilot. You have them as the bad guys. There's enough guns there to take Hal and Gabe hostage. So you don't need 5 other guys.
Less bad guys, but more cannon fodder. Find an excuse to get more people up on the mountain. And not Frank, obviously.
So hostages.
Yeah.
So the plane,
maybe
more
people on the plane.
The plane was commercial. It was a commercial private jet.
And like you make the crash more dramatic by like killing, say, like 7 people on the plane. Yeah. But then like 10 survive, so that they can kill off a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. Because you take the plane hostage. You got the stewardess, the pilots, whatever, and then you do the plane scene where the money comes down. And yeah, I get that. Either way, less bad guys or more kind of. I'm with that.
Yeah, you still need people to die, but yeah, I totally get it. Yeah. In terms of video games, there was a Cliffhanger video game in 1994. Electronic Gaming Monthly, one of the biggest actual gaming magazines back in the day, proclaimed it the worst movie tie-in of the year. That was actually a pretty big deal back then because there were a lot of movie tie-ins. It was for everything. The Game Boy, the NES, Game Gear, Amiga. Spidersoft covered those. And in that classic 90s video game style, Malibu Interactive then made the Super NES, Genesis, and Sega CD versions. The only thing they had in common is the fact that they were both absolutely rubbish. Supposedly, one of the reviews said, I think it was the Sega CD version, they would always have unique levels in the Sega CD versions of these games to show off the fact that it was a disc-based medium. It had snowboarding levels, which doesn't really make any sense to the film. But one of the reviews said, this should have had more snowboarding in it. I'm like, well, then it just becomes a fucking snowboarding game rather than a cliffhanger game. So none of those are great. If I was going to make it today, the two options for me, it's either there's a climbing game called Jusant by Don't Nod. It's available on Game Pass if you've got Xbox, and it's fantastic. It's not violent at all, but the climbing in it is amazing. So you'd have to throw in some action, but the climbing mechanics are fantastic. In terms of a combination of traversal and combat, and if you wanted to throw a really big budget at it, I would go with Death Stranding by Kojima Productions, a game which I know isn't up everyone's street. I absolutely adore that game, and a big reason for that is the sense of progression. So whether you're walking up a mountain, climbing up a mountain, just getting from A to B always feels like you're achieving something, especially if, instead of carrying Post, you could have Hal carrying his fucking stupid ass girlfriend up the mountain, but you just add in that little bit of action and then you add in like extreme weather and stuff like that. So I would go with one of those. If I was going low budget, I would go with Jusant. If I was going big budget, I would go Death Stranding.
Never played Death Stranding, but I've heard mixed things. The traversal and the
I would
stuff.
never say you have to play it because it's one of those, like, if the traversal clicks for you, of course it's a Kojima game, so the story's nonsense. It's set in a future America which just looks like Iceland. Doesn't make any sense. Don't care. But if you get into the whole idea that just like that element of just delivering post and getting from A to B, they've somehow made exciting. And it's one of the things lacking from most video games. Like you have these big open worlds and just getting around is a piece of piss. It's why the Zelda games are so good, the recent ones. But this one takes that and just turns up a bunch of levels where even just getting over a stream is like a massive pain in the ass. But I think in a good way. If that doesn't click for you, you're going to fucking hate it. But I'd be interested to hear what you make of it if you ever get around to it.
I came up with two. The the easiest answer for me would be Naughty Dog. You get the story. We've had scenes where he's been on the edge of a mountain with snow and everything in Uncharted 2. You got a great story with bad guys and stuff like that. So I think Naughty Dog. But when I wanted to think then of traversal and climbing, I've recently been playing, and it's not had rave reviews, but I don't mind the traversal or climbing part of it. Deliver Us Mars by Ken Interactive. So Deliver Us the Moon was a fantastic puzzle game. I only recently found it. I think it's a fantastic puzzle game. They did a sequel where they've gone more third-party traversal and climbing and more interactive with the character. And
third person.
Third person. Did I say third party? Sorry, third person.
Okay, no problem.
And I think the traversal across the Mars landscape and the climbing and stuff, I think is. I've only just started playing it, so it might get tedious as I go on. But I think that is great. But for me, the answer is going to be a Naughty Dog game. I think Cliffhanger.
I totally get it. It depends. Like I think it's like which way you come from. Like, is the emphasis on the story or is it on the climbing? So if you're going for the big bombast and stuff, it's definitely Uncharted because if you want to like turn a Hollywood movie into a video game, like they're the specialists, aren't they? The only thing is their climbing mechanics are very simplistic. Whereas like Jusant, there's hardly any storytelling. It's all kind of like, based on finding things in your surroundings and stuff. Environmental storytelling, that's what I was going for. But the climbing itself is amazing. If anything, like, why couldn't we combine the two? Why couldn't, that's what people have asked for from Naughty Dog. As great as Naughty Dog is, it's those relatively simplistic mechanics where if they could kind of like up their game there, or I don't want to say up their game because they're looking at retaining pacing there, but you made the climbing a bigger part of the story. Why the fuck not?
When Nathan Drake climbs, mind, he's free climbing, and that dude has climbed like his grip strength is fantastic.
His grip strength is supernatural. It's fucking supernatural. How many times in one game does he fall and then grab on by his fingernails and survive again and again? Like his climbing is just it's Olympic level. It's Olympic level climbing. And also murder. He murders so many people.
Oh my god. Yeah,
it's what is it? What's the term? I think reverses a cognitive dissonance. That separation between the character and the storytelling and what's actually happening in the video game. It's very prevalent in video games because you're supposed to like Nathan Drake. This kind of like, oh, he's an adventurer. He fights the bad guys. But then by the end of the video game, you're like, wait a minute, how many fucking people has he put in the ground? You're like, dude, you've just murdered 500 people. And by the way, you're the greatest climber who's ever lived. Even better than Gabe from Cliffhanger, the sixth best climber in the world, without question. Without question.
There's a fine line between murder and genocide in that game.
And he is tiptoeing that motherfucker. I mean, they did it in, because I know you replayed the Tomb Raider games not too long ago, the most recent Codemasters ones, which I love and actually think are a good shout. The opening of the second game in the most recent trilogy, it's her climbing in the snow. It's up a mountain, and she has the claw and everything. It's it's still relatively simplistic, but a tiny bit more involved. They tried to deal with it with the first game, where she gets all upset about killing a deer. Then a dude tries to sexually abuse her, so she kills him. Again, gets very upset, and then immediately gets over it and kills 7,000 people.
Yeah, I always love it because you've got the quick time event where she's sobbing and she shoots him, and then she's just laying on the floor and she's about to be sick, and then it cuts to you picking up the gun and just murdering like 4 people in one go.
Yeah, it feels like 3 minutes later you're finding the rocket launcher. Oh, you're going to kill some motherfuckers with this. So yeah, video games has a long, illustrious history of cognitive dissonance, of having a complete disconnect between the storytelling. And as the storytelling becomes more advanced, that cognitive dissonance feels stronger and stronger because you're attached to these characters and they try to ground them in the real world. But at the same time, you're just murdering motherfuckers every 2 minutes for the gameplay to work. So yeah, absolutely bonkers. But I think maybe a combination of the two. I think, if we get that, because this film is inherently cinematic, if you had Naughty Dog, but they kind of implemented a climbing system in it, somewhere between either that and Death Stranding or that and Juicent, I'd be totally on board with. In terms of ratings and recommendations, I've gone back and forth on this, but I'm going to go with 4 and just about yes. I think it's still a totally fun watch. Some of it's dumb as fuck. And my wife and I were talking about it. We're like, this is a 3-star movie for the most part, but it has like a handful of 4-star set pieces which elevate it, and Stallone and the cast and stuff.
Yeah.
So this should be a 3-star movie, but there's just enough for me for the needle to nudge towards 4. I'm going to fall into the same conversation we had last week with the faculty, where I'm like, I think it might be a 3.5, but if I'm going to pick a side, I'm going to say it's just about a 4.
I mean, you nailed it. It's a 3-star. Like the set piece and all can't rescue it for me. Like it is a 3-star film, but I don't think I would recommend it. I was thinking about it. Like, what would it, like when you've got Sylvester Stallone films? There's better ones to recommend. I'm not too sure I can.
Yeah, but I don't think that. Well, me personally, I don't think that counts. If someone said, "Oh, tell me a Sylvester Stallone movie to watch," I wouldn't pick this one out as one of the top ones.
No, you pick Daylight.
Yeah, I'd obviously pick Daylight, or I'd pick Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. One of those classics.
Dave loves that film.
Of course, fucking Dave loves that film. But if someone came up to me and said, "Oh, like it is now, like Cliffhanger is on Amazon, should I watch it?" I'd feel pretty confident saying it to anyone, yes, because yes, it's a bit dumb, but as we mentioned earlier, the pacing's great, the action set pieces are fun. I'm not telling anyone that this is a masterpiece. I think you're probably right with the 3 stars, to be honest. Like I said, it's somewhere between the two. It's a 7 out of 10. Why don't I just say it? It's a 3.5. It's a fucking 3.5.
You've kind of hit the nail on the head there, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody asks me, should I watch Cliffhanger?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I recommend go for it. Watch Cliffhanger. It's
but you're not
film.
telling motherfuckers on the street.
But I'm not going. I'm not shouting into the streets. Go watch Cliffhanger. But if somebody turns around to me and says, "Should I watch Cliffhanger?" Yeah, go ahead, watch it.
There's such a specific thing in my head now, where you go to a Halloween party dressed as Travers. You're having to explain to people that you're Travers from Cliffhanger. They don't know what Cliffhanger is. You explain it to them. They go, "Oh, so shall I watch it then?" And you just go, "No." which would just confuse the fuck out of people. Like, you're this super obscure character from Cliffhanger and you're actively telling people not to fucking watch the movie.
You know what? I might have to just find a Halloween party just to do this.
Oh, dude, just for that situation, just for somebody to ask, "Oh, so shall I watch Cliffhanger?" and just say no, and you just walk the fuck out as Travers. And that's the kind of Travers shithousery which shows your commitment to the character as far as I'm concerned. Anywho, that's been 1993's Cliffhanger. Watch it if you fancy. It's on Amazon Prime. Next week, it is your choice, sir.
I will say, before I tell you my choice, I had a much better time with this than I thought I was going to have with Cliffhanger. I was quite afraid that I was just going to turn around and just shit on this film completely.
I've only seen it a couple of times. I actually enjoyed this more than I was expecting to. After I picked it with all the confidence in the world, and part of it was just because I noticed the remaster was on Amazon Prime. I was like, if I'm ever going to do this, now's the fucking time. After I picked it, I was like, man, Cliffhanger might be shit. Or it might just... I don't think I ever thought it was going to be shit. I was worried it was going to be bland and forgettable. It's not that. It's definitely not that. It's got loads of problems, but it's not bland and forgettable.
Okay, so we're sticking with 93.
Okie dokie.
Do you want anything else?
3. Do I want anything else? We've already done Jurassic Park. Not Train Spotting. That was 94, wasn't it?
Is it that long ago? Fucking hell.
Train Spotting was 94, I think, yeah. I know. No, wait. No, sorry. It might be 95. I think Train Spotting was 95.
I thought it was 97.
I thought it was 95. You have to check it out now, in case I'm talking absolute bullshit. Well, give me the next...
we're 96.
Oh, motherfucker. Well, we split the difference. We kind of got it right between us. Okay, I don't have it from 93.
That's okay. I'm going to give you... I don't usually go genre, but the genre made me laugh. Gun Fu.
Gun Fu.
Yeah.
Gun Fu from '93. I was immediately thinking of that Christian Bale movie. You know, the one where he has all the guns and he's
Equilibrium.
Equilibrium, but that's like 2001, I think.
Yeah.
Is it? It's not like a John Woo movie, is it?
Director John Woo.
93. Hard boiled?
No. 91 hard boiled, wasn't it?
Oh, it's the one they've remade. Not Hard Target. What the fuck is it called?
I know the one. Yeah, The Killer. It's not that.
Okay, fuck. Which one is it then?
It's not Hard Boiled or The Killer. I'll give you an actor and then we'll do it.
Arnold it's just Vosloo. Fat.
Arnold Vosloo.
Oh, it's not the fucking hockey one, is it? With Jean-Claude Van Damme. Oh, what the fuck?
One. It's not the hockey one with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
But it's one with Jean-Claude. Sudden Death?
That's the hockey one.
Oh, motherfucker.
This is fucking painful.
Is Sudden Death the one where he has the mullet?
Nope.
Or is the one you're thinking of the one with the
one we're doing is the one with the mullet.
You've got the film. See the poster. I can see the poster, but I can see the hockey statement.
You're so close.
Hard Target.
There it is.
There we go. Jesus Christ. Sorry, man. Thank you for your patience there. I got there eventually. I had to convince myself. Jesus fucking wept. I thought you were going to go for like a Hong Kong thriller because obviously he's remade his own movie recently, hasn't he, John Woo?
Yeah, he's remade The Killer. I think it's like they've given him middle of the road. I will watch it.
I
so want to do Hard Boiled, and we will get to it. Mm-hmm. But I want to do Hard Boiled where I can watch and I know this sounds pretentious as fuck.
I want to watch the
subtitle version. But it's finding the time at the moment to sit down and get the subtitled version out of the way. Because
you have to, because I remember it's the only time I threw away. I bought Hard Boiled on DVD back in the day, and for the longest time in the UK, it didn't have subtitles. So the only way you could watch it is dubbed. Now, people in Europe are like, well, we do that all the time. Well, we don't in the UK. I don't mind with animation. I can deal with that absolutely fine. Live action, I just cannot do it. And especially when it comes to an actor who I know what Chow Yun-fat sounds like when he's speaking English. So to suddenly have somebody else's voice, it's like if you go back and watch some of the 80s Jackie Chan movies and they dub his voice. I'm like, well, I know what Jackie Chan sounds like speaking English. So it's like this barrier I can't get over. And I just couldn't watch fucking Hardball. So I just gave it to my friend. I'm like, dude, I can't fucking deal with this. So I had to wait for the special edition and finally got that and obviously watched it with subtitles. That might sound slightly douchey, but I just couldn't get over the dub thing. I just couldn't.
I love the fact I've picked the film. Usually we talk about that film for a little bit and then we say goodbye. I picked the film. We haven't mentioned the film I picked. We went somewhere else.
I mean, I took so long getting to the film. I mean, I'm kind of happy that I finally got there after all that fucking around. If I hadn't got it, and fair play, you baby stepped me. You walked me to the fucking door on that one, but we got there eventually. I am actually looking forward to watching this because I don't think I've ever seen this film, Target.
Have you not?
I've not. I've seen Sudden Death, another film I actually want to do because I know the famous hockey sequence at the end where he pretends to be the goalie and plays like 3 minutes in the Stanley Cup final in the sticks for like the fucking Vancouver Canucks or some shit. I can't remember what the teams were. Oh God, what were the teams? Because they actually signed off on it.
There was a Penguin. One of them was
Pittsburgh Penguins.
Pittsburgh's, and another team. I can't remember
the other team. Anyway, we'll do.
Do you know what's? And we will talk about Hard Target a little bit before we say goodbye. But do you know what's funny about Sudden Death? They remade it with Michael Jai White. It's called Welcome to Sudden Death. Again, he's a security guard. I know Van Damme was a security guard. He was a fire chief. But it's about terrorists taking over a hockey building, and the security guard has... It's like completely pretty much the same film. And it's a film that doesn't need a remake.
Because all of a sudden I'm like, I really wish you had picked Sudden Death. But anyway, we're going to watch Hard Target instead, which you're going to have to speak about because, as I said, other than the mullet, and I could remember the poster, but I conflated the two in my head where I'd placed the hockey stadium in the background. I was like, no, these are two different films. So
I can't wait till you see Brussels Van Damme, right?
Brussels Van Damme.
Well, what was it?
The muscles from Brussels.
Yeah. So what accent is it? Is it French? Is it...
he's like, he's Belgian. So, depending on where you are in Belgium, it's like because of where it is, you get like different accents, different parts of the country. Like, I went to, you go up north and you're on the border with so many different countries, but, he's speaking French,
That's fine. So with his Belgian accent, but his grandfather is Cajun.
Fantastic.
Is in New Orleans, so it's fantastic. And yes, there is a sequel, Hard Target 2, released in 2016. Yes, I've seen it.
Of course,
because it stars Scott Adkins.
Okay, is it actually any good? Because we do like Scott Adkins, but
I like the sequel. Yeah, I mean it's throwaway. It's again, he was an ex-UFC fighter who accidentally killed a guy. So
very 2016. Very 2016.
He's now some guy said, "Oh yeah, we can get you your money back, so we can get you your fame back," and then they hunt him in the jungles of Bangkok or somewhere where it's easy enough to film.
Classic. It sounds like the sequel everybody was expecting fucking 25 years later, or it was. Unbelievable. But I mean, like I said, I've never actually watched it. Is there any way you can watch it, or if somebody's listening in, or?
Yeah, so unfortunately, mate, it's a rental for you. It is on Amazon Prime. It's on most of the streaming services, but it's a rental.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But I guess like everyone else, like everyone else, I assume a lot of people have actually seen Hard Target. I've never seen Hard Target before, at least I can't remember watching it.
So surprised for an action lover, John Woo guy as well.
I know. It's just one of those weird like blank spots in my movie history where that's the whole point of this podcast. Like sometimes it's great to look back at them, and obviously we'll have two different experiences. Like you going back at a movie you've watched, I assume, quite a few times.
More than Cliffhanger. Let's be fair.
More than Cliffhanger, fair enough. But yeah, I think that'll be a good one. So yeah, good choice. Please do join us next week. Anything else to add before we wrap this up?
No, mate, I'm all good this week. Thanks.
Cool. I've been Liam. He's been Rob, and you have been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.